What's up? What's up? Welcome back. It's your favorite rapper's favorite podcast, and welcome back to Rapology. I'm your boy Maurice.
This is DJ City.
Yeah, what's going on? This is episode number 4. So what's going on with you, Si? How you doing today?
Beautiful. It is like 80 degrees here. So if you are listening to this, we usually record on a Sunday, but today we caught in a nice day.
Right, exactly.
I'm just happy to be here. It's like I said, it's a beautiful day. I feel the summer coming. I'm already skipping spring.
I know, right?
Like, let's just get all the way to the summertime. That's what it's
exactly. I guess we get right into the episode on today. Like I said, today is episode number 4, and we want to review a album for this week. And that album is from none other than the hip hop legend himself, Nas, in his debut album, Illmatic.
I wish it had some effects or something, like an air horn, some applause or something.
I know, yeah, we got to add something like that. Yeah, one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. Got to give it its just due. Right here, pictured on the wall, Illmatic, released in 1994. Just an amazing body of work. What do you have to say about it?
Definitely. So, I mean, it's the 21st anniversary is coming up in April. No.
It's actually been 30 years.
It's been 30 years.
30 years. Going on 31 years this year.
You're right, because 30 summers, let's talk about it. 30 summers,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Shout out to Nas. That's what I'm saying. Yo, that's how you know my math. But it's crazy. But you know what? Just talking about like 94, like it's just crazy how time goes by so fast. You know what I mean? Like, I really remember when Illmatic was released, and just like the impact it had to me personally. Like I said, as a child growing up in Chicago, like definitely one of the albums that I think was my introduction to like the New York hip hop scene. Like for me at the time, I was really big into Tupac. I was still kind of like on the West Coast, like G-Funk type sound at the time, and trying to find my way into like what I like as far as hip hop went. And Illmatic, like I found it and I was like, oh, this is like, this is fire. And I was really young too, but I remember having it on the way. I think my cousin had it. And I like stole it at the time. But it's a phenomenal project. I mean, like you said, the greatest hip hop album of all time. If not, maybe one of the greatest albums of all time.
It is. I do agree. And we're going to try to do a deep dive into Illmatic. Like I said, Illmatic, released in April 1994, recorded by Nas. It got some production on here from the likes of DJ Premier, Arch Professor, Heat Rock, LES. You just Q-Tip. Yeah, Q-Tip. Right. Can't forget about Q-Tip on One Love. It's just an amazing album. I got the introduction of AZ. At that time was not known. He made his introduction, and the flow that he spit on Life's a Bitch was just probably one of the greatest hip hop verses of all time, hands down. So yeah, we just want to discuss Illmatic and just get right into it, So do you want to, get right into it? You want to take the first song, or you want me to leave it off?
So I feel like it's only right that we kind of like, I think maybe just, we talked about like what it was released. Well, I thought was super interesting before we really dive into it, like just kind of thinking about hip hop at that time. And I didn't realize this, as a child, but it took 2 years for this project to even go gold. So like we talk about this being like the greatest hip hop album of all time, but like if you think about at the time how long it took for artists to like go gold or platinum, and from what I know and understand, it's like the reason why it took so long is because niggas was bootlegging this joint from like the jump, like even before it was actually officially released. So it was just like, it really was one of those albums that the streets just like, it took over the streets by storm. So I don't want that to go unnoticed, that like, although, people talk about album sales and records and all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of times it really it don't have to be all that for it to be impactful, right? Like it's just a dope project. I mean, this was the pinnacle of hip hop, you know what I'm saying? And from the East Coast at the time. So it's one of those things that's just like, dang, it took 2 years just to go gold.
Yeah.
The power of it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to piggyback off that, it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking about that as well. I was like, some of the biggest hip hop albums of all time, the album sales wasn't that major, because, we're in the age now, everybody talking about streaming numbers and Billboard charts, and that never was a factor when hip hop started. So that's the beauty of this album. And I think now, as we stand now, it's actually like double platinum, but it took years for Illmatic to get to that. And like I said, it took 2 years just to go gold. It didn't chart well at all at the time. It released 5 singles. None of the singles did major. But that lets you know, it doesn't forget the numbers, like how the impact the body of work. What does that say? How does that impact the people? So that's what Illmatic is. That's what it was. And the Source magazine at the time when it dropped, he gave it 5 mics. So, and anybody anybody know back then the Source was like the Bible for hip hop. That was the Billboard charts. You wanted to see what that album got, what the Source thought about it. Forget what Billboard and all these other publications thought. We were looking at like how many mics did it get in the Source. So the Source recognized it from the jump. They named Nas, he got Lyricist of the Year that next year at the 1995 Source Awards as well. So they really gave Nas his just due and respect. And that's all that mattered. The culture recognized Illmatic for the great body of work that it was. Forget about the sales. The sales, as you can see, came later. But just wanted to give a salute and a little backdrop on Illmatic and its impact.
Definitely. It's shameless plug because Nas is my birthday twin.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
September 14th, it's a special day for me. That's my birthday. Anybody that knows me knows I'm
Virgo.
Like the biggest Nas stand free. And so I just tip my hat off to him. And I was so excited when, Maurice brought up reviewing this album. I was like, easy work because I'm like, easily my favorite hip hop album. You know what I mean?
I agree.
The greatest. But we're gonna get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get right into it. I'm gonna jump it off. I want to talk. I got some notes here and everything. So much shit. It's hard to remember everything. So I got some notes here, and I want to talk about the first track. Is actually, the intro and everything, not a song, but it's called the Genesis. Basically it's an intro track that sets the stage for the dialogue of the whole album. It comes off with that streetwise, cinematic feel. It actually contains a conversation sample from the 1983 film Wild Style. It has, if you pay attention, you can hear Nas, AZ, and Nas' brother Jungle in the background, having a conversation back and forth. And so, it just sets the stage, the genesis. And I just love how that just segues into New York State of Mind. But like I was saying, the Genesis was produced by a producer by the name of Faith Newman, and also Nas produced on this song as well.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's, definitely the thing I love about this project is it's a story. It's an entire body of work from beginning to end, right? So it's so dope. Even the first track is called The Genesis. Think about the Bible. And that was the thing about Nas was that he was so real red that he knew even at I think he was 19, 20 when he dropped this project, right? So
exactly.
Even at that age, he was well beyond his years. And he was able to take some concepts and the things that he read and he knew about and apply it to the music.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
The samples, we're gonna talk a lot about the samples in this project because it's just he pulled from so much dope music and culture references and you said, the Wild Style film, easily one of the greatest intros.
Yeah, it is. And just talking and just the beat drop. It's just like you were saying. I think they say he started actually recording this album when he was 16. That is just crazy. And it's just hard to believe that Nas was this young talking like this, and the stuff, the subject matter, and what he was rapping about. That's just crazy. 18, 19, 19, 20 years old when the album actually came out. This dude was just this young guy. I find it hard to believe. I don't think Nas was this young. It's just hard to believe, man.
It is.
If you listen to Illmatic, it's this coming from a 35-year-old man or 40-year-old, all the lessons and subject matter that he already had at that young age was just unbelievable. It lets you know, like you said, he was a very intelligent, well-read guy, and he put it into this album. So, and you could definitely tell.
For sure. I think, we will talk about it a little bit later, but just learning more about the history of the album from the documentary. I think if I remember correctly, he was writing a lot of these raps, as he was kind of going back home from school and just walking, and he would take, a little longer to get home just so he can get these rhymes out. I also heard this story of and I don't know how true this is. So y'all in the comments, let me know if y'all heard this story or if y'all can validate this. But I heard that he was messing with a girl. And when they would get into it, he would go to this other apartment or something where he would just like write his raps like away from her when they were
Wow.
like, yeah. So I don't know if it was during the time of Illmatic or like what the time span of that
Yeah.
was, but that just goes to show you like Nas was always using the elements of New York to like really shape the way that he writes. Like he would go into like his quiet places and like in the walks, through Queensbridge and just
Yeah.
using that time in his element to really write these raps. Like his life influence, I would say his life influenced the storytelling, within the project. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just a beautiful story, well written storytelling. That's a cool story if it's true, by the way.
I hope it's true. I
If
feel
that really
like with
happened.
that's some player shit. Like you know what I'm saying? You got a whole nother spot at the other
Yeah.
side of the city just to like, what I'm saying, get some write some
Yeah.
rhymes out or whatever. I heard a couple different iterations of it. Like, I don't know if he wrote the rhymes like actually on the wall. It was like an abandoned building I heard. So I
Nice.
heard a few different,
Hey,
iterations of the story,
that's
but
dope. Is that's
I
true
don't
though?
know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to probably listen to some records to see if I can decode if he talked about it. If I was talking about his life, in
Exactly.
his rhymes, yeah, nah. I mean, it's like I said, just a great way to start the
Yeah,
project.
great way. And of course I got to mention the album cover in itself. Iconic album cover. One of the, probably the first, I think, hip hop album cover to ever use a hip hop artist as a young child or something like that on the album cover. So yeah, we got to shout out to the legendary album cover. I think they say he was like 7 or 8 years old on this picture with the Queensbridge project backdrop in the background. And I also saw something interesting on this album cover as well. They said it haven't been confirmed, but they said they think it was inspired by another album cover from a jazz album that came out in 1974. The name of the album was called A Child Is Born. It's cited as an influence for Illmatic's artwork. It haven't been confirmed and nothing like that, but yeah, I'm gonna put it up on the screen and everything like that. It's a picture of a little girl, a young girl, probably around the same age with a backdrop in the background as well. And this came out 20 years before Illmatic. So maybe the person that did the artwork maybe was inspired by that. I know Nas said he was inspired by Michael Jackson. Mike had the afro when he was a little boy and stuff like that. But I just thought that was dope. It haven't been confirmed. I don't know how true it is, but that when I was doing my research, they had a side by side and it looks damn close. It got the same color scheme and everything. So I don't know if Nas came up with it or the person that actually did the art direction for the album came up with it, but it's damn close. And so when I post it and put it up on screen, I'll let the people decide and everything like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Queensbridge, where you grew up, Queensbridge projects. I'm hoping everybody listening to this podcast know about Queensbridge projects, but
Right.
it's one of the largest projects, in the city, and just how he was able to paint the picture of growing up, in that area. I feel like that album cover was perfect. It was
Iconic.
Yes, because it really Illmatic was about growing up as a young boy in films. So it was the story of that. Which I think the Genesis leads to, like, again, talk about the art of storytelling, because to go from the Genesis to New York State of Mind and just like it sets the tone for like what you're really about to get into, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not to jump too far ahead, but I mean, when you talk about, the second track is New York State of Mind.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I'm saying? And he did that in one take. It was like,
wow.
Yeah, that was the thing with New York State of Mind. Like he did it, just he wrote the raps like a few hours earlier in the studio session, and then he just spit it, and then it is what it is. That's what makes it so dope.
Yeah, over DJ Premier's production. Yeah, that
Yes.
just amazing, man. So you want to go into New York State of Mind since
For
on
me,
that topic?
yeah. I mean, for me, New York State of Mind is, I won't say it's top 3 tracks on this project for me. And think about like the top 3. New York State of Mind definitely was one of them. It was like the grimy record that, like I said, set the tone for the project, because I think the picture that Nas is painting here is what it's like to grow up as a boy in the Queensbridge, project. So for me, I think, what was one of the lyrics you said in this that I was like, this
Look
is
up some lyrics.
Yeah, let's go ahead, because if I remember correctly, he was like, I think of crime when I think of New York State of Mind. Like, but if you think about like the beach of production, he like, all right, you know what I'm saying? This is grimy, and Premier definitely put his stamp on that, like just concrete jungle sound.
Yeah.
With New
Dark,
York State of
gritty.
Mind. Yeah,
Yeah, it is. New York State
definitely.
of Mind.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
I agree
And I
with
think it
that.
contains a few different samples too. Like, so the Cool in the Gang joint, the record called NT, he actually sampled that a couple times throughout this project, but I think you hear it the most on New York State of Mind. And he also sampled Mind Rain by Joe Chambers, Flight Time by Donald Byrd. Shout out to you for these notes too. But he sampled a lot of really great, like, musicians and people that we knew and not, may not have heard of.
Exactly.
Eric B. Rakim, like Mahogany, like, taking those samples. Mir was really, really fire with that.
And that's why I wanted to highlight, because the production on here was amazing as well. So I wanted to highlight how they put this whole album together with Nas, with his lyric and the production. It was just a perfect album. 10 out of 10. The production and of course, sampling is the core of hip hop. So I wanted to not only shout out the producer, but just tell how they put that beat together, which samples that they use on each song as well.
Definitely, definitely. I think what was also kind of dope too, like, I heard that, like, so, Nas wasn't like fully popular. Like, he wasn't the big at the time and not like that. So he kind of really like bootstrapped his way up. That's why what made Illmatic so dope is because everybody in Queensbridge rocked with Nas and like knew who he was, and like all the producers was really trying to work with him because of what he was doing. But I think one of the samples, the Live at the Barbecue, I think that was like that record where he was like featured on it was when people started to like pay attention to him.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the thing that really got the streets like talking about him. And this was on the time we didn't have internet. So
yeah, exactly. So you had to be the man if you were buzzing back then. It wasn't no social media and internet to help you grow your fan base.
Right. So he took his own sample and he was able to like, put second track, he hit you with it was intentional. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah, it was intentional, man. I want to read something from the first verse, man. He just, with how he come in with the rappers, I monkey flip them with the funky rhythm. I be kicking musicians, inflicting composition of pain. I'm like Scarface sniffing cocaine. Like this dude holding the M16, see with the pen, I'm in screen.
Yeah.
Like,
and what's crazy is because when I think about, again, music that was coming from like New York at that time and like the sounds and everything like that. We talked about Biggie last time. We talked about Mobb Deep, of how in their stories, it was so raw and it was so like visual. And it's like, very just, like very visual. And the delivery. Like, they say some stuff, he's like, dang, this is crazy. The way that Nas delivered New York State of Mind in a way that was still gritty, still raw, but still so eloquent, like, that's what made it so different than, like, the Mobb Deep and, like, the big. It was like, he delivered it so just, yeah.
He was confident, man. Like, he was a confident young nigga, man. He knew he was the shit. It's like he already knew I'm a legend in the making. Like, yo, I know this about to be one of the greatest albums. Like, his approach was just different for a young dude, So, shout out to Nas for that, But shout out to DJ Premier, New York State of Mind. So, yeah. So I guess we'll move on to the third track, my personal favorite on the album. I would say probably my number one favorite, and that is Life's a Bitch featuring AZ and also Nas' father, who is also on the track as well, playing the trumpet at the end.
People don't know that.
Yeah, that's Nas' dad. Yeah. He's credited, his name is Olu Dara. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, playing the trumpet on it. Just a beautiful song. How he closes out Nas' dad closes out the song with the trumpet playing and everything in the beat. And this contains a sample from the Gap Band. The Gap Band, Yearning. Yeah, Yearning for Your Loves. The way, who produced this? This was produced by LES. The legendary LES produced this. Amazing sample, amazing beat. And AZ, AZ, what he did on this track, man. I think the rent was due. Nobody knew who this dude was. These dudes was hungry. Then Nas come back with the second verse. Both of these guys just killed it. AZ, the standout verse. They say this is the verse that got AZ his record deal. Everybody was so impressed what he did. Nobody knew who AZ was at that time. So the dude, who is this guy coming in like this? So just amazing, beautiful record by AZ and Nas. What is your take on it?
No, I'm with you on this. Like, this was my favorite. If I had to choose, top three, Life's a Bitch was number one for sure. Like,
yeah.
What I woke up only on my born day.
Yeah, 20 is a blessing.
I want that every year.
Oh yeah, you got to play that part.
I'm not even 20 no
Birthday
more.
twin.
I'm still saying I woke up early on my birthday.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I ain't gonna hold you. Like these is one of the verses where I contemplate like, did AZ outshine Nas? Because like you said, like B was going like the rent was due.
Yeah.
First verse coming out, like I don't know.
Dude, snap, man. AZ. I'm gonna look, cause I don't want to mess it up. I'm gonna look up the AZ verse and just spit a little bit. I'm no rapper, but
the first line was crazy.
Yeah, AZ, this nigga went and said, visualizing the realism of life in actuality. But who's the baddest? A person's status depends on salary. And my mentality is money orientated. I'm destined to live the dream for all my peeps who never made it. Like, cause we were beginners in the hood as 5%ers. Like he was just going in, man. But something must got in us, cause all of us turned into sinners. Like this dude, like what he was saying, and me reading it doesn't give it justice. He was flowing, like he was riding that beat, like he was going in.
Talking about delivery, you know what I'm saying?
Delivery.
The elements of like what makes a great hip hop, track. I think delivery is one of them ones. Delivery and lyrics of this was just again top tier. We can't get his project enough flowers, y'all.
Yeah, you can't, man.
I don't know what to say.
It's the perfect album. Did AZ outshine Nas on Life's a Bitch? If I had to say, I would give the slight edge to AZ. I probably would. But Nas, both of them did amazing classic verses. But if you had to ask me to pick who I'll give the slight edge to AZ. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I contemplate all the time on other records as well where AZ outshines Nas. AZ is fire. And this was the perfect introduction, to who they are. Their combination, we talk about hip hop duos, they're technically not a duo, because they had Fox from first. Them two together, it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's effortless, honestly.
Fire. Yes. They can't miss. They all, went on to have a legendary careers. Both of them now still one of the most underrated hip hop MCs ever. One of my personal favorite. Excuse me. He dropped some heat. He came out with his album the next year, 95, Sugar Hill, his sample. So, AZ, he had a legendary career and he's still going. Now still going. So this Life's a Bitch was the beginning, what we came to know as both of them, because both of them made Nas already had some songs, but I don't think AZ nobody knew who he was at this time, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm not. This was like you said, this was his intro really to, industry and was his gateway into getting his own record deal.
He was hungry. Like I said, the rent was due, man. That boy left Earth. AZ left Earth on this one, man. AZ. Yeah, he went in. Anything else you want to?
I like too, sorry, I was just thinking
go ahead.
The production of Life's a Bitch and like the progression of how you go from New York State of Mind, which is like the grimy, dark type beat, but then you pick it up a little bit with Life's a Bitch and it kind of just has this progression throughout the sound where it goes from grind. It's like art. You know what I mean? Like it goes from grimy, it's a little bit picking up a little bit more of an optimistic kind of sound, but also just recognizing life, life's a bitch, and taking life as it comes. Like that's what I get from the song. You know what I mean? Like, hey, life's a bitch, and then you die. Like it just.
It's a true song as well. It's true. You can relate to it. Everybody can relate to it. Yeah, exactly.
It kind of brings
it's a harsh reality. This song is.
Yeah, and that sample, Yearning for Your Love, brings that light and airy feeling to it. It's like that backdrop, it brings that hopeful kind of sound to it. And then it gets into The World Is Yours. So if you think about like the artistic buildup of the project, it goes from like you growing up in New York State of Mind, you know what I mean? Like you think of crime, you think of New York, and it sets the tone for what it's like. But then there's these glimpses of relatability from, the samples and the soul that makes you feel like, everything might be okay. And if it's not, at least we can dream that it is.
Yeah, it's a little glimmer of hope. Yeah. A little glimmer of hope for everybody. Yeah. I agree with that. The world is yours. Yeah, I like how they say whoever put this album together, sequence each song from the first to 1 through 10 did an amazing job. Whoever did that was responsible for putting, organizing the song sequence and whatever it's called. They did amazing, like you said, because every song just flows into each other. It makes up this perfect story. It's like the story, like you said, they go from New York State of Mind, life's a bitch. But I don't want to give y'all, I want to give y'all some kind of hope. I know I said life's a bitch and then you die, but I'm gonna give you some kind of hope. It's still hope, and that's what, The World Is Yours, comes in. And another story about The World Is Yours, I actually use that song as my, alarm when I wake up in the morning as well. Yeah. I have it set to my Apple HomePod, so when I set my alarm, that plays. Whose world is it? The world is yours. It's nice confirmation, to give me a boost for the day. So shout out to Nas for that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And like I said, you don't know, I'm a musician, so and I love jazz, I love soul music as well as I do hip hop. And like I said, when I think about the transition from, Life's a Bitch and like, again, the samples that were used in this project that I know for sure were just so intentional and the way that it was structured. So like we talked about, like this progression of gritty to soulful, like with Pete Rock being the producer, like everybody knows Pete Rock, like you gonna get soul when you get him, right? And you listen to The World Is Yours and it just continues this like stream of soul. And not only that, it incorporates one of like the most iconic samples of like I Love Music by Mal Jamal Trio. Yeah. It's like you hear their original version of that, like that piano, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like Pete was on some like
Pete Rock was.
Hear that and create The World Is Yours.
Yeah. Amazing. And he was on the hook for the ones that didn't know. He was the one saying it's mine, it's my, whose world is this? And Nas, the world is yours. So that's Pete Rock actually on the hook with Nas, if for the ones that didn't know that as well. So he did an amazing job producing this, like you said, the samples and everything like that. Like I said, some of the samples on here, like I said, I Love Music, It's Yours by LaRock and Jazzy J, Walter L, Jimmy Gordon, and his Jazzy Pops band. Just like I said, some people you never even heard of, but that's just the amazing part of hip hop and the production, that they could just take these songs and make them into a hip hop, what we hear, the final product. So shout out to Pete Rock for that.
Definitely. I think I've seen in like one of the anniversary clips where like I think Pete Rock was saying that I think Nas wanted him to like rap on it, and he was like, nah. Yeah. And then he just ended up like doing the hook or whatever.
The hook, exactly.
Like, it worked out perfect. I mean, great project. I mean, here's the other thing about music that I love. And when we talk about impactful, what makes a project a classic, because I think that's a conversation people have a lot. It's like, what makes an album a classic? When an album can revitalize a song that was in a previous genre or previous decade, 2-3 decades ago, and make it something new to where it's even more relatable. Like I said, that sample of I Love Music, that like that whole piano, that when I was like a kid and I was learning how to play piano, that song made me want to go back to the original sample and learn it. Like I got introduced to another artist and another song from a completely, again, different genre, different decade, and fell in love with the original. And I think that when people are considering classic albums, I think they need to consider the production and how they're able to revitalize a record that they are sampling. Can introduce the listener to something that they've never heard before through this genre. And that's the beauty of hip hop, because there's not a lot of genres that can do that, a sampling and introduce you to like other things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is one of the ones that did it for me.
Yeah. It did, man. I agree with that. And of course, Nas delivered with the lyrics, first verse, I sip the Dom P watching Gandhi till I'm charged. Then I'm writing in my book of rhymes. All the words past the margin. To the mic, I'm throbbing, mechanical movement. The dude, like Nas' wordplay, man, his wordplay, his cadence, his delivery, that's why he won Lyricist of the Year, and you can see why. And like I said, we're just reading a little bit of the lyrics as we go and stuff like that. That's from the first verse of The World Is Yours. Of course, he got that from the classic movie Scarface, Scarface blimp and everything like that. So, and like I said, just an amazing from Nas, 18, 19, 20-year-old talking and rapping like this. Just amazing.
Yeah, definitely. How old was like? I'm trying to think about how old was like producers. Like how old was Large Pro and Pete at that time? Like I never went back and like looked.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they're a little older
age.
than Nas, but they were young men as well.
Yeah,
probably
still
in the
young, right?
mid to late 20s, probably at that time. Because I don't think none of them. Not
but
too
Nas is
old.
still the youngest one.
Yeah, exactly. Because AZ was a little older than Nas at that time. I think AZ, he still was young. AZ was probably like 21, 22.
Yeah.
Probably like a year or two older than
because
Nas.
I don't think AZ is that much older than Nas.
Yeah, exactly.
Just again, for an artist of that age, man, to be able to align themselves with producers who are a little bit more mature and just make something like, Life's a Bitch and The World Is Yours is just crazy.
Crazy.
Before their time. Their time.
I agree. Excuse me, this pollen got me sniffling and coughing and stuff, like I said.
There's another shameless plug also for the cologne you mentioned earlier today, because I feel as though
that's
probably part of the
I'm wearing that Creed Absolute Aventus.
One.
By the way. Yeah, that's a good one. Shout out to Creed. So all the fellas, if you're listening, definitely get you some Creed in your life. You won't be disappointed. Shout out to
the ladies will agree, I promise you.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about more cologne and stuff like that, future episodes and stuff. I want to put you guys, some of my hip hop heads, onto some cologne. The ones that may not know. I know some of y'all probably know what's up. So yeah, we want, want to do that as well.
Definitely. So that's our lovely commercial break for halftime. It brings us to the next joint on Illmatic of halftime. Like again, talk about perfect timing, perfect alignment. There are 10 tracks on this project, right? Like on the original.
Right.
Halftime is number 5.
Halftime. Intentional. Halfway through the album.
I noticed everything. I'm number 5 bet. Halftime. Makes sense.
I didn't notice that. You actually made me realize, that
listen. Story time, you know what I mean? It makes sense. Like if you're in the studio and you're trying to figure out how to, track list this thing, halftime at the half of the project makes sense. And again, think about the progression of the productions, right? Like going in and out of like gritty and soul and upbeat tempo. And, halftime is another one where, Large Pro comes in with this kind of cool, funky beat, and it's up tempo. Yeah, and sorry, I don't know if you want to get.
Yeah. I was just basically listening to you. Basically like the note saying, Nas, he was more braggadocious on this track. How he was starting it off. So, and basically, of course, a lyrical onslaught. Nas on the Large Professor beat, like you said, they purposely put it in the middle of the album, which made sense. Halfway through the album. Nas come back in with, just a different flowing. Like I say, it's like I got my confidence now. I'm almost halfway through this masterpiece. He always had it, but it's been solidified. We're already halfway through. And like you said, Illmatic is not a long album. Illmatic is under 40 minutes long. For a lot of people that may not realize that, it's actually like 39 minutes and a few seconds. So it's a very short album. You could drive around the block and come back and the album is over. So that's what makes it a masterpiece to me. Wasn't long, wasn't drawn out. Just 10 songs, actually 9 songs, because the first song was just intro. So yeah. So what he did with halftime, amazing. When
I first heard the project, I'm not gonna lie, I think that halftime didn't necessarily capture me the way that like New York State of Mind and Life's a Bitch did, but like I never skipped it. It was one of those records that like the project it was unskippable, right? But I just remember feeling like, oh, okay, this is cool. But it didn't capture me like all the other records did. And then now obviously now is just like ingrained in my brain. You know what I'm saying? But Large Pro, and you can't go wrong with Nas and Large Pro. I mean, honestly, like that's the combination. I think I don't hate to say Nas does his best, because he does his best with everybody. Like the Nas and Large Pro connection link up is also another one that's like peanut butter and jelly. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what would you get from there?
Take a sip real quick.
People be sleep on, Nas hopped on a lot of amazing records in life.
Yeah, he did. Man. Halftime being the I think I would assume that was the first record that they did together, but shout out to him.
You can look it up, but yeah.
Definitely look it up, you know. And the samples that Large Professor used on this track is a song called Schoolboy Crush by a band called Average White Band. Another sample, Dead End by a group called Japanese Haircast. I think that's how you would pronounce it.
Yeah.
And Soul Traveling Part 1 by a singer by the name of Gary Bird. Cool Hand Stanley by Wander F. Frog. And those were the samples that made up this amazing production.
Yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed Halftime, and I think that it was a great storytelling record too, right? Because he just kind of like going through the lyrics. He is going through Queensbridge, like he going through the time in his life where, you know, as a young man does, he gets, you know, his confidence, he gets his you know what I mean, he gets his stripes, he earns the title Nas at this point.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear again that progression and to be able to tell this story in 10 tracks is just like crazy. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And like you said, and Illmatic, if you want to know what Illmatic is, it basically just tells the story of Queensbridge, growing up in Queensbridge, what it was like growing up in the 80s, in the 90s, as Nas was coming up from a youngster into where he was at when we heard it. So that's Illmatic in a nutshell. Everyday life in Queensbridge.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, again, storytelling. Track 6, talking about memory lane, sitting in the park. Oh, that's my joint. Yeah, every time I hear that, I say the title of it, and then the song like pops in my head.
Memory Lane, nice. Yeah. Produced by DJ Premier. DJ Premier shows up once again on the album.
Yeah. It opens up like, it's got a super light, airy feel to it.
Nostalgic, reflection. Yeah.
And nice. So like I said, I hear it immediately when I think about it. You know, it's one of those ones that, again, storytelling, you know, talking about the story of sitting in the park, just and just life. You know, I think this whole project is about life. And and all, you know, how he grew up. Like, so I love the production on this one because it continues that light and airy, but there is always this undertone I feel when it came to Illmatic where it still had that street feel to it.
It did.
Like it still had that, you know, that.
It was very raw and street. It really was. Basically, that New York sound in the early to mid 90s. It just captured that perfectly.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I love.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying, I was thinking like, hey, I love his like delivery on Memory Lane too. Like he's crazy.
Yeah. And like I said, this album wasn't meant to be commercial. Wasn't meant to be played on TV, or is meant for the true purist hip hop fans and the true hip hop lovers, and you know, and that's who the people that appreciate it. So classic by Nas. 5 mics. Like I said, just, you know, like I said, he reminiscing on street life and friendship and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Memory Lane, sitting in the park, dope track. I think it was a lyric that I wanted to, when he said, I rap for prisoners, blunt heads, fly ladies, and prisoners, Hennessy holders, old school niggas, then I be dissing them. Unofficial, that smoke, woolly tie. I dropped out of school, coolie high, gassed up by a cutie pie, cokehead cutie pie, jungle, survivor, fuck who's the liver. My man put the battery in my back. A difference from Energizer. Like I said, I'm trying to capture Nas in the flow and stuff like that. It's hard to read it, you know, but we
gotta work on our karaoke also.
Exactly.
We are a Rapology podcast, okay?
Exactly.
Deliver
facts in the background. So those were the lyrics from Memory Lane, spit by my man Nas.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a bunch of quotables in there, like again, captions. I quote Illmatic during my captions all the time, and I rap for more fans, fly listeners.
Yeah, exactly. Illmatic has a lot of hip hop quotables. Maybe one of the famous ones, the sample that Jay-Z took and used on his debut album. You know, when Nas rap, I'm out for presidents to represent me and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, but basically, so, all right, so you ready to move to the next song?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, you know, we didn't we get into the Q-Tip produced One Love, you know, the only record that Q-Tip is on, you know, produced for, but definitely one of my favorite records on the project as well. I think what was so dope to me about it was because he dedicated it to like his friends that were in prison. You know, at the end he was calling out all his homeboys that were, you know, in prison or whatever. Because that was again like talking about what we learned from documentary. That was like the backdrop of him making this project. Like is he was growing up in Queensbridge. Like he was a lot of his friends were dying and going to jail and everything like that. And he really had hip hop, right? Like to keep him alive during that time. So I just thought it was super dope and honorable, as I think Nas is to dedicate One Love to his homies. And I think if I remember, I thought I saw something like Q-Tip on him for it to be about like a girl or something, or about something else, like a different topic. But he ended up just, you know, making it about like, one letter to his friend.
Okay. That actually makes sense. One Love, if that would have went in a talking
Yeah, I need to
about
look
a
up
relationship, that makes
yeah,
sense.
I need to look up what happened. Yeah, I mean, you know, it made sense. Like, think about like Bob Marley, One Love, like it's still applicable. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the storytelling as well, you know, like I said, talking about his friends in jail and um basically talking about I guess the woman that he's dealing with, how she came to see you and all this kind of stuff. And I think she dealing with the niggas that basically on the other side type of thing. So the lyrics on here just amazing. Q-Tip on the production and on the hook as well with the one love, you know, just amazing. Great.
Dope record. The other thing too, it was one on the anniversary version of Illmatic. They have the remix of One Love. The Q-Tip highly recommend. Like if y'all never heard the remix to One Love, highly recommend you go find that. Like I said, it was on the anniversary version of Illmatic, and for me, I think One Love remix is better than the original.
Yeah, you think so?
It had a different stand to it. It's the same song, but it was a different production. It was a remix, so yeah, I love it.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Definitely listen to it if you haven't. I don't know if you heard it, but highly
Nice.
recommend.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. And the samples that Q-Tip used on One Love is just two. Smiling Billy, Sweet Part 2 by the Heath Brothers, and the title track One Love by song by Houdini as well. So those are the samples that he used on the production for One Love.
Yeah, definitely. Super fire, man. I love that one. For sure.
Me too.
And then, you know, we get into what is this? One time for your one time for your mind, you know, another lesson one time. And this one was who was this produced by? Again, another large pro. Another large pro.
Large, yep. Shows up again.
Yeah, another jazzy one. Real chill.
Right.
I think record. For sure.
Yeah. Laid back, like I said, laid back track. Reading from the notes, over a jazzy beat produced by Large Professor, as we just mentioned. It's more of a vibe song, showcasing Nas' cool, relaxed, laid back flow. So it just an amazing track. This is at the tail end of the album. This is track number 8. One Time for Your Mind. Large Professor used some samples from a group by a singer called Walter L. Jimmy Gordon and his Jazzin' Pops band. And also he sampled Nas in this song as well from a song called Nas Will Prevail.
Yeah. So I don't think this record is talked about a lot. You know, in the context of like Illmatic, people just usually go to like the likes of Bitch or New York State of Mind kind of thing. But I love One Time for Your Mind. I mean, I love the whole thing. But One Time for Your Mind, I did feel like it was real chill. It was just like,
it really was.
I love the ad-libs on it. Like,
yeah, it was dope.
Yeah. It was dope. Real. It was flowing. I would say one of the more slept on B-side ones from Illmatic. I'll say. I would say.
I agree with that. Okay.
Yes,
all right.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. So
we got the last 2.
All right, so we're getting down to the closing out the album. Track number 9 and it's called Represent. You hear them shouting over the chorus, represent, shout out to it. And this was produced by DJ Premier as well. As common theme, DJ Premier basically produced the bulk of this album. Shout out to DJ Premier. So yeah. have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say the one was. I mean, you hear represent, you just hear the chanting, like
yeah, represent. Yeah, he basically shouting out the Queensbridge.
piano. Yeah, man, the pianos like throughout the whole project. It was laced like I feel that is laced with a bunch of great sounds and samples. And
yeah.
represent is another one. It's just raw and full of like just instrumentation, from piano's perspective, and the flow was crazy.
It was.
It was super dope. But what stuck out to me, and I think where everybody in here represent, you just hear the chant.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like it definitely
that really resonate with me. Like the basically representing the hood, representing Queensbridge, representing where you from. It's basically not nothing to make it complicated. That's basically what this song is about. Basically a raw anthem for the streets, filled with aggressive bars, menacing beat by DJ Premier. Nas captured the unfiltered energy of Queensbridge, basically like what we said, with the relentless flow, and of course I'm gonna mention the samples. The samples that were used were a song by the name of Thief for Baghdad by Lee Irwin, and another song, All Night, the drums by the legendary George Clinton. So that's the samples that DJ Premier used to produce this beautiful classic street anthem for Queensbridge. Represent.
Like this was, thinking about the structure of the project.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Represent is, man, it's almost like it's leading you to the end of the project, because it's just like, yeah, I done told you all of this, how it was like to grow up in Queensbridge, how the challenges and everything like that. And now I'm saying, like, let's represent, what I mean?
Let's represent, yeah.
I really put Queens on, not, he wasn't on one, but like, what I'm saying? He represents Queens, what I'm saying?
Yeah, he represents, yeah.
Yeah, he a great part for real. And I just, man, this record was always like my cue, like, dang, I gotta restart the project all over again, because I knew this was the second to last song. But it was super fire though, man. Just the,
super fire.
Yeah, like the up tempo, the dedication to his hometown. And what's so dope about it is because even as tough as Nas described growing up in Queensbridge was, like, this project is laced again with like this concept of hope and, just getting out of the situation and doing better, being better, and representing where you're from. And he never really just completely trashed out Queensbridge. Like that's his home. It almost made you want to be there for a little bit. I know, right? It almost made you want to be from Queens.
Yeah, he took you into the world. He took you into his world. Like you said, the imagery, the storytelling, the lyrics, the cadence, the delivery that Nas did. He took you into that world. And like you said, if you wasn't from Queensbridge, you felt like you close your eyes and he put you there with these songs and everything like that.
Here I am, like 6 to 7, it's almost to represent.
Exactly.
Like, I'm in Chicago. Like,
yep, he took you there. Yep, exactly. So shout out to Nas. Salute the DJ Premier. Classic. And as we close out the album, we're gonna go to another one of my favorites on the album, and that is called "It Ain't Hard to Tell." Classic. Classic.
What?
Yeah. My man Nas sampled another sample. This was produced by Large Professor, as well. He shows up again. And it contains the Michael Jackson sample. Like, that was major. Like, y'all got Michael Jackson to clear a sample for y'all for this hip-hop artist. Yeah, 94, Michael Jackson was the biggest star in the world at this time. I think they said the stipulation, he said Nas can use the sample, only one stipulation. He said if only Nas don't curse. So if Nas don't cuss on that song, he welcome to use the sample. So shout out to Michael Jackson for allowing them to use, and it's just an amazing sample. And if you don't know what that sample is, it's called Human Nature. If you listen closely, you can hear the Michael Jackson sample playing throughout the tracks. Shout out to Large Professor for that. This is one of my favorite songs on the entire album. If I had to pick 3, I'm gonna pick "It Ain't Hard to Tell," "Life's a Bitch," and "The World Is Yours." I'm gonna pick them 3 for sure.
Okay, I think my top 3 gotta be "Life's a Bitch," of course. "It Ain't Hard to Tell," and "New York State of Mind."
Okay, New York State of Mind. Nice. That's a good 3. Like I said, can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with any song. Perfect album. 10 out of 10. 5 mic classic. The Source, the hip hop Bible at the time, said this is a classic hip hop album. Excuse me. See rave reviews, critically acclaimed. It's revered among a lot of hip hop fans as the greatest album of all time. A lot of people say that, and I agree. I agree with that. I think it's the greatest hip hop album of all time and one of the greatest music albums of all time, no matter what genre of music it is. So yeah, shout out to
Rolling
Nas.
Stone, actually you just reminded me, like, Rolling Stone actually
Yeah.
had pegged this as like number 44 out of like 5, like they
Yeah,
ranked
I
like
saw that.
500 top 500 albums of all time.
That's
regardless of,
amazing.
like, the genre decade. Illmatic ended up being number 44.
That's amazing.
It was like it's literally critically acclaimed from like
Critically,
scholars across. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
Across, the world. So man, shout out to Nas, and he is a living legend, and I hope that he feels the love. I know he does. When he did his latest show at Madison Square Garden, and he was headlining, like he definitely felt the love, of his fans. I hope he continues to feel that way. So many times we have to wait until an artist passes away for them to know that they are appreciated and cherished. But I think Nas, I think he knows, and I think that we could always do a better job of highlighting him and giving him his flowers. People talk about Jay-Z so much, and Jay is cool, but like, man,
he ain't Nas. He ain't Nas. Jay ain't Nas.
Jay is Jay. And
Jay
Nas
is Jay.
is
I like
Nas,
Jay.
but, but when you think about artists that have done for hip hop, you know what I mean, as a culture and a longevity, Nas takes the cake. I mean, what Nas does through Mass Appeal, and again, the way he shows up for hip hop. I remember being, obviously I live in New York, so I was around for the Hip Hop 50 celebrations, and Nas was, you know what I'm saying?
He did a big concert.
And he showed up.
Yeah, he did. He
showed up to Yankee Stadium. Jay-Z was not there. So take that with a grain of salt. But Nas is always showing up for hip hop.
And you can tell he's a fan of hip hop. I think Cameron said this one time. You can tell Nas actually loved hip hop.
Yeah.
He actually loved the culture. He's a student of, he cares about the craft and about it. So of course he couldn't let Hip Hop 50 go by and he not do nothing. You know what I'm saying? So that's salute to Nas.
But not everybody felt that way.
Exactly. Some people got too big now, to take that stage. But if it wasn't for hip hop, you wouldn't be that person that you are now. So, and I think Nas knows that, and he understands that. Like, yo, I know I'm Nas, I know I'm critically acclaimed, I got money, I got the fame, but I wouldn't be none of those things if it wasn't for Illmatic, wasn't for hip hop, so I have to always show love to it as well. So and
before the Time of Warriors say something about Jay-Z's exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum during Hip Hop 50, that's not the same. I don't view that as the same. I went to everything that was Hip Hop 50 related, and that the museum was super fire. Shout out to Jay, but it was different than being on stage at Yankee Stadium celebrating hip hop, and Nas was there. To me that matters. You don't. It's not just about one man. Like, it's about the culture. It's about the genre. Everybody on this podcast, I don't know, like, hip hop is special to us all. I just love the way Nas honors the culture, and he puts forward really and truly.
He does.
For the culture. Yeah, that's not too sad. That's not too serious. Like I said, I can go into,
exactly. Salute to Nas. And another thing before we close out the video, the documentary that we mentioned a few times on here, you definitely should check it out. It's called Time is Illmatic. It was released on the 20th anniversary of Illmatic back in 2014. So yeah, definitely check that out. Great documentary. You'll basically understand how Illmatic came about. He was talking about his upbringing, how his father is from the South, and he was a magician. He met his mom in New York City and all that kind of stuff growing up, and his relationship with Ill Will and what happened to Ill Will. If you're not familiar with that, that was Nas' best friend at the time that was killed. If you're a Nas fan, you hear Ill Will name mentioned a lot through Nas' career. So yeah, definitely check out the documentary for Illmatic. It's called Time is Illmatic. You can find it on multiple streaming services. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And, that is that, shout out to Nas, shout out to Illmatic, shout out to Large Professor, everybody that put this together, AZ for leaving Earth, snapping on that lights a bitch. song, everybody that just was involved in this album, So what,
Definitely.
any closing words you have to say?
Nah, man. Brave hard.
Yeah.
I should just like the podcast say screw it up, but nah, represent, man. Illmatic is one of the ones greatest hip hop album of all time.
Illmatic.
One of the greatest albums. Perfect album. Flawlessly executed. Amazing production. And I was also kind of reading like Illmatic was, at the time it was a lot of just artist, producer, they typically stuck with one producer.
Right.
But with Illmatic, he had again large pro, he had Q-Tip, he had, Premier.
Premier.
He was kind of like one of the pioneers that would bring the concept of bringing multiple, large producers, major producers onto one project. And now today is such a, everybody's doing it today, where they have all these superstar producers on one project. But back then, that was like, a thing. And I think he actually wanted, I think he wanted Large Professor to like do the whole thing, but then he got sick. And so then it was like he had to go and, he reached out to Tip or like, he was working with other people, but it worked out. Yeah, you can't even tell, like, it was even better the fact that, like, all of them was on the project. It was
great. It was great, man. And also before we close out, like I said, Illmatic, no famous guest appearances from a bunch of big name rappers. AZ was featured on the song. Nobody knew who he was at that time. He had Q-Tip on the hook. Q-Tip was known, of course, he was in Tribe and stuff like that. But other than that, Nas, he did this album pretty much by itself. And he mentioned it on Got Yourself a Gun on Stillmatic. He said, my first album, my first album had no guest appearances. The outcome, I'm crowned the best lyricist. So, basically, he was just saying, like, I made this classic body of work pretty much with one rapper guest feature on there, and he was unknown. I didn't have, the hottest rappers in New York at that time on here. I had some well-known producers. Q-Tip was known, Premier was known, and stuff like that. But other than that, I had to come and deliver, and I did. Yeah, all the best, man. Shout out to Nas. Shout out, and this is our album review for the week. Illmatic, the classic, released in 1994, be 31 years next month. So, yeah. I'm Maurice, and I guess we'll sign up. Maurice, this is Rapology, your favorite rapper's favorite podcast.